the stream of gratitude, letter writing practice, and then the short loving kindness practice. And then maybe once we have a chance to process this, we'll just do a check-in and see if people need a break and how everybody is doing. So in this room, who facilitated the stream of gratitude? Natalia, okay, and then Melanie. Okay, so why don't we start with that? What was that like for the two of you to facilitate that activity?
Enjoyed it.
You enjoyed it?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing with me,
Uh-huh.
I think that, for me, I think it's easier to have everything already ready and in my hand, because it's like, it's finding that balance, like getting the materials while you're explaining, like, that's the only thing that I think,
Me too.
that I like struggle with. I think it's better to have everything on hand, so you're not taking time away from the explanation to hand out things, but other than that, I think.
I ran into that too, where like I gave you guys the paper and was reading the instructions.
Yeah.
I started and I hadn't rung the bell, so I wasn't sure. How did you guys do it when you did the example? Did you? I don't even remember. Just like, I'm not sure how to time that either.
Yeah, the timing.
Yeah, so we can talk about the specifics of that activity, but one sort of broader point is sort of two things. One is that there's no substitute for just practicing, right? So the first time you've done it, it's totally natural to feel like you're gonna read it or like, what am I doing again? So part of it is just the doing of it and knowing in your mind that automaticity of you know what's coming next, and so that's perfectly normal, even having just seen it like minutes ago. Then you gotta do it yourself. You have to go through the motions to have that feel natural, so that's totally normal. The other thing is that, and a lot of facilitators have had this experience, is half the battle is getting the materials prepared. So Tasha, and I don't know if Stephanie, you also help prepare these. I mean, they deserve like accolades for getting all these things this organized. It is a lot, there's a lot of stuff, and so having the materials, you know, taking them out, so you know, in real life you'd have them all lined up just for that day, and you'd sometimes like literally intentionally put them in a certain order so you knew what to grab, so that there's not that impediment.
We have drawers with every letter, and then we just put the supplies in there, and like, the hardest thing is making sure you have copies of everything, because, you know, you have to do that every time, but.
Yes, definitely. So, and it's little details like having pen, you know, like all those things sort of set up. So the more times that you run it, you know, facilitators develop systems for having those things handy. And that's also part of walking through it, is figuring out in the process where the best way is to distribute materials. So, and you guys weigh in if you have a different opinion. My personal preference is often to just, like in this activity, I would have just passed out the pieces of paper and then had everyone have a pen, get those logistics done, and then given it to them, because that way they don't hear the instruction and then you have to wait and pass out the materials and then what are we supposed to be doing? So I think it's better to pass it out, give a quick intro, like now we're doing an activity is going to involve doing some writing, pass out the materials, people are ready, and then they can listen.
And you could always say, if you're worried about people starting ahead of time, you could say, in a moment we'll start when I ring the bell. I'm going to give you some instructions first, or something like that. And just when we'd all just done it, so I think everyone was just, they already knew what to do. So, but usually that's not how it is. You know, the group is like, what are we doing with this very special piece of paper?
Right.
So they're ready and listening.
At least I got to see Melanie and Natalia, but I thought you did a great job. Any other feedback from people who were participants in that activity that you'd like to share with Natalia or Melanie? Okay, awesome. All right, and then Vicki in our room facilitated loving kindness, and then who facilitated here? Oh, you did both. Oh, right, because you're playing catch up. Okay, great. So, what was that experience like for you all? Thoughts, questions?
I liked it. This is my favorite theme. I think out of like all of Learning to Breathe, I think teens really identify with it. I mean, they might not know like what tenderness is at the beginning, or like even practicing neatness, but like once you explain it, I think all the dots connect and they're able to get and even though I think they might feel awkward just with like the loving kindness, just from experience, but and sharing might be like a little awkward, but I think they get it.
I said the exact same thing with them, that this is like my favorite letter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, not having even doing it with teens, but even with parents, it seemed like this was their favorite week as well. Just that little concept of even if you don't have enough time to do a lot of the practices, like when you do feel like you are being hard on yourself, you can like just take a step back and like just be compassionate. I think that's an easier thing to practice, and I think a lot of people get that.
I think the fact that you all can relate to it in that way is really important, because I think it makes it really real. And I think we are all really good at being critical of ourselves, all of us, and we all can use a little more self-compassion, especially teens. So I totally agree with you. Actually, I think the research is showing that when we break down elements of mindfulness-based interventions, acceptance, so self-acceptance and self-compassion seems to be one of the most important components of interventions. I think for this very reason, that it just feels like it resonates because we're not particularly good at doing it automatically. Yeah, absolutely. Any other comments or questions about that particular practice? Things that feel uncomfortable or you're uncertain about? Other tips from people who facilitated, just about what tends to make that go more effectively, I guess?
At least for this loving kindness, like longer practices, I always try to be like, remember, if your attention wanders, bring it back, even if it's not in the script. Just like, because you can kind of like watch when teens are getting a little restless, and I think that's a good like point just to help them bring back their attention, and also just be like, you know, we're practicing. You don't have to be perfect, just as long as you're breathing and following along. You're practicing, and that's what's important.
Yeah, that's a really great tip. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think like a lot of the activities, I think the processing afterwards have realistic expectations. You know, we are obviously a group of adults, many of whom have a particular interest in mindfulness, and have experience. I think with teens, you know, as Vicki pointed out, this can be very new. And so it's nice to have a little discussion at the end to try to instill some of the take-home points, but to also realize that they are probably not going to supply you, very unlikely going to supply you with the same kinds of conversations we've had today. Do you all want to add anything to that? Would you agree with that or not agree with that based on your experiences?
I think it really depends, for one, on the group and on the day and the topic. Because sometimes I'm surprised, I'm like, oh, okay, I feel like I'm talking to an adult. And then sometimes it's like, nobody's talking at all. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's okay sometimes to sit in the silence.
We were talking about that on Friday, and I was saying, like, Stephanie's so good.
Like just, waiting for somebody to have the courage to say something.
Yeah.
And then modeling that, like, that's gonna be how it is.
Yes.
Exactly
Rather than if you don't say anything, I'll just jump in and fill the space, and then
Right.
so you get a pass and you don't have to say anything.
Yeah, we were talking about like how they have to have time to process things, because like we're familiar with all this stuff, but they're new to it, so silence is good.
Totally, and all it takes is one or even one really positive comment to get other people thinking about things, right? So
Yeah.
if you get one person to identify how they felt after a practice, or that, anything about their experience, that's really valuable. So I think sometimes we have the expectation that we want a lot of volume of discussion, but that's not necessarily true in this case. And we can also, as Tasha said, we can take sort of what the group comes with and go with that. So.
And we can't assume that just because somebody isn't sharing, that they're not having an internal experience of processing that.
Absolutely, definitely. Okay. All right. So that would be really the meat of concluding session T, and then as would be the case in the other sessions. We have the review of home practice, and then the closing practice, the person just like me, which we have not typically done, as I've shared, but I love that, so we're gonna try that. Okay, so we have, it is 3:30, we have 1 hour left. Do people want a 10-minute walk and catch your breath? Do we want to dive in?
I'd like to get some water.
Okay, all right. Does that sound good? All right, why don't we give ourselves 10 minutes just to refreshen in whatever way, reset whatever way you need, and then we'll come back at 3:40 and go for final 50. Okay. Final 50.
Just go through.
Have you done Thursday or Friday?
No.
Okay, yeah, it's your first day. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no,
Those days,
no, totally. I just didn't notice. I was here only half of Friday and none of Thursday. I was traveling. So we are, what we're gonna do for H, is we'll do just a really brief,
Like do the recap.
Really
Because H
brief.
is such a, it's like you practice the things that people really practice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, we'll do just, we'll kind of do an abbreviated, we've been doing more abbreviated like psychoeducation transitions and more focus on, let me turn off this recorder for a minute. More focus on the actual activity so they can get a feel for what those are like. So we'll do the mindful quilt activity and the closing circle. So we'll do those kind of back to back and then try to give people a chance to practice. And that'll be that.
I feel like I get it basically like I did it at like 10 because yeah, when you're done it, it's just like I cannot wake up early enough to practice. I have to prep for everything, but that's it. I woke up at 6. Sorry.
You can have more panel. To bring it. To make me.
Oh, yeah. I hear ya. I have that problem frequently. There are different challenges to wearing white.
Yeah.
I was thinking I was definitely gonna spill my spaghetti sauce.
Oh, no.
But luckily, I lucked out.
Yeah, having spaghetti when you're wearing.
We look close to each
Yeah,
other.
I know. It was a bad combo. Bad choice.
Yeah. I think, for Vicky, it won't be too big of a burden just because we're a block from each other.
Literally.
And we'll other than that, that's fine because Melena's going on her own.
Mm-hmm.
So, you guys, she'll pick us up, we'll drive down to Children's. I'll wait for you guys. If you guys are done with the visit or whatever it is, we'll leave and then go to the Red Rocks. I mean, it's really easy. It was just more filling in Melena because she texted me. She was like, I was asking her something lab related, and she's like, oh, I can just give it to you tomorrow. And I'm like, she's like, just ride with me. I'm like, well, I can, but then I also could ride with you guys, so it doesn't really matter. But, yeah. Cool.
I'll be good.
And then you guys will come back Wednesday morning. You guys will go to Children's. Right? You were talking about your friend or something. Meeting in Aurora.
No. She is coming in on Friday.
Okay. So then you guys will go to Children's. I will go to the Andrews Library.
Been great.
They have a treadmill there. I was like doing work on the treadmill.
They have a work one at Children's too. I didn't realize it, but apparently Melena found it. And on the first floor at Children's, it's like a walking workstation.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Okay, I'm gonna have one more. These are so good.
I know, they're tired.
I love it.
You should have like their,
Well, usually I'm not like that one with like almonds. Like
Some of
so
those,
hungry,
is
I'm
there a
like,
period when, or is this program on?
Like, this is my new favorite,
And a period where you observe.
This is just a 3-day training.
Okay.
Yeah, so. Would not have and not attach any other commitments.
I realize I don't actually know the bigger context very well yet, so
We're talking about the
I'm
thing.
really excited
Good.
doing this.
And I'm not like,
Yeah, I know.
That should be
Have you, and so glad
But then,
and
I think I'll Melena.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure, because of like.
Yeah, no
the rest
other-
of summer, if I wanna like
I'll tell her that.
Keep
we're
some
in
other
Sunday
weeks
and
open
Emma's.
for like
Yeah.
observing.
Actually, I was like talking, she didn't know
not
about any of the plans.
That's not that
I was
I.
like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
I don't know
fill you in
that-
later.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
if
didn't
Jeff
update
does
her on anything.
Friday.
I was gonna text her today, but I was like,
But if you
Yeah,
wanted to.
I thought I'd talk to you guys and then
then
finalize
say.
and we just
I know, I was like, oh.
Perfect.
But I didn't set a time to.
Perfect.
And I just like,
What time should I be ready for you guys? Or for you? Yeah, I think that sounds really good.
Thank you, though.
Yeah.
Morning.
Absolutely. I think we probably just figured
Was that
that
you?
you were, knew that you were interested in mindfulness and
Yeah,
coming,
okay.
and so a good opportunity to
Yeah.
participate in the training. I'm glad it worked out.
I don't know what time it is.
Are you, what else are you up to this summer?
Let's say 7:15, because you guys are kind of on the other end, so just getting on time.
That's fine.
That's
Honestly,
really
I
good.
thought I had to wake up at 4, so
No.
I have to wake up at like 5 or 6 now, so.
And then, yeah, my uncle's coming from Germany this weekend for like 2 weeks.
Okay, cool. And then the next day you guys have to be there.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Well, it's nice to have things be a little more low-key before you
You're gonna go
dive
with
into
it too.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
It's
then.
also, like, my
Contemplating
house
how,
is
like,
also.
what should I do for?
Okay.
So we can.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I'll go with you
It's a
guys.
little-
Like, I'm really
fun.
tag along.
Are you?
I have to remind
like,
you.
are you moving
It's fine.
before
I
college?
Leanne's gonna bring it up.
Oh,
last week, so I could like sleep here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow, where's your?
So I'm not, I mean, I
6
can
minutes
bring
that
it
way
up.
walking.
Yeah.
I'm so yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's great.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, the
Yeah.
training's really
So
close,
then
but I'm
after
so sure that you
children's,
can't really
We'll
escape
get,
it.
like, you guys wanna get ready, children's,
You
get
know.
ready in the
Your
parking lot.
politeness, I guess.
I'm gonna literally come dressed, you guys have to change.
Yeah, let's
Like
get-
the train and things like that. So
Yeah.
the noise is
Get
a
in
little
the car.
loud.
And then do makeup later.
Yeah, but also.
I'll have my kit with me.
Bring your
Good.
foundation. Well,
That's
that's
really the other thing
great.
that I have that
Yeah,
won't
I
match.
do wanna-
If you wanna look at different colors. She's like orange.
You like put foundation on your arms and your legs and stuff. I have time.
Yeah, well, hopefully this is a good chance to
Oh,
connect with
so
some of the
good.
people here who are in labs
Yeah,
that you might be.
I'm so happy.
Or
Like a group
projects.
photo.
I just can't. I have that Cedar Creek one.
Actually, we're
It's a board. I would if you want one, but I think it would work. I have that Cedar Creek gift
I'm
card.
that
So I
paper
get to treat
too.
myself to lunch.
So nice. I'm like
So
gonna go with
excited.
my
I
goals and just buy like
know.
6 paper.
I
So-
know,
Yeah,
totally,
let's-
I'm so with you, it is so nice.
Because it's like, what am I gonna pack?
I know.
Nothing.
You gotta bring them to that.
Well, welcome to
Like,
Fort
here's the
Collins
thing, I know-
officially.
I don't know. I would honestly, I've had dinner at restaurants before. So you can get like a burrito for like $9. It's not bad.
Sounds like a fun
No,
time. There's,
I don't think I would. No. No, I think I do. I just don't want to. I just don't have my phone.
Yeah.
You know what? I think I might be wearing a dress in this pocket, so I'm bypassing
Bring
all
up
that.
Sandy
Of course
Sarah.
there are, yeah.
Bring up, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Bring
Yeah.
back, who said that?
Yeah, I'm not into Facebook, or I'm not on Facebook, but I hear like there are lots of good ways to find out about what's happening.
Very
and
social
you
things like
should get their contact
Oh my
information.
god.
And then all the key.
I think we need that.
And that's a good idea.
So
I
it's
know
just
Lauren
that
got
for
it
you.
together. I don't think she has this is gonna be a very long
When we're done.
Things packed up, totally.
I just or a screen.
Yeah.
Megan, before I forget, Mrs. Lauren Gully is away.
Yes.
If anything comes up tomorrow or
Yes.
Friday,
Okay.
call me, you have my cell phone number, okay, good.
How is
Okay,
your?
okay.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yeah, I think this will be one of our
Have you done
first
anything
set, people
interesting?
doing the full thing without around.
Family's doing some stuff,
So,
like older weekend, so I was like, okay, so I
Do you
didn't
want-
spend the weekend here.
Oh.
They could just be like, I'm
We
leaving
have, like,
you, like,
two
I'm here
active
Friday,
suicide
I'm like,
ideation.
like,
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
maybe you were watching some
It's
of
been
those,
good,
it's
though.
just like, oh yeah, one more, yeah, because we talked to you from it.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Just saying, good, you know, it's a tough list.
They're
I feel like I've
hard.
seen only,
Like
I'd
concerts.
say about
They
30%
have
have been actually.
Old Town, so like,
About
that's-
70%.
it's like Old Town, but it's like far down. It's like our version of
Yeah.
downtown.
Yeah.
It's called Old Town.
Yeah, so.
I don't get that.
So we are lucky charm.
I hope
Like, it's just
so.
silly,
For some
but
good luck here.
Yeah, I
that's
guess
it.
so.
That's it.
Those are classes in Natalia?
Yeah.
Natalia. I always think Natalia.
Ooh,
I like it.
Yeah.
They're just funky.
Yeah, this is so great.
I didn't see the board meetings online on Friday. And I was
And do
super
you use these index cards for the quilt? Is that what
I
you
was
guys
too.
do?
I remember you being two, so I was like, whatever Melanie does, I know I do.
Yeah, I was actually really confused. I wrote down something weird for the
Yeah,
last
we
one.
use
and I
use
thought
instruction
I
paper.
was like,
Okay.
oh, and then
I'm wondering
I
if
think people
these
were
were-
having like write a letter to
I
themselves
noticed
and I'll
when I
mail
was
later.
younger,
There are no
materials,
instructions.
there's
Right.
Okay, whatever. It's like, no, that was too gratitude.
Yeah.
Letter to
Yeah.
yourself. Maybe you guys don't do that. Yeah, part of the, I mean, it's not a big deal, but we do some activities that you all don't do, that are not included in here.
Well, your hair's got really
Yeah, so the mindful quilt, we did a letter writing activity.
But that's Melanie, your hair is really freaking
Yeah.
long too.
Yeah, my hair's
I was like, because you had it in a braid like the last couple
yeah.
of days, so I was like, it's pretty long. But now that you let it go, I was like, it's really long. It's beautiful.
For like a long time, I didn't know someone was either because I would like look at where like hair went on other people's bodies and I was like, it's the same like hips. I'm like, wait, I'm taller. Oh.